You already know the face. The wild hair, the tongue in that one photograph, the equation on the posters and the t-shirts. All this is a picture of the genius himself. But that man didn't exist yet. Rewind a few years to a quiet office in Bern, Switzerland. There's a young man at a desk reviewing other people's patents 8 hours a day. He's in his early 20s. He couldn't land a university post. Academia had more or less turned him away. Most physicists in Europe have never heard his name. And in the margins of that ordinary job, he is quietly taking apart ideas about light and time and motion. Things the greatest minds alive assume are already settled. No one around him knows what he's becoming. The question we came to answer is a simple one. What did Albert Einstein understand long before the world understood him? My name is Atlas Ingram, and this is the first episode of the Immortal Minds podcast.
Who makes the past? Who lights the fire? The minds don't fade, they only rise higher.
Albert Einstein, welcome to the Immortal Minds.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so before we go anywhere, before the photographs, before someone decided the word genius belonged on your face, I want to meet the man who was actually there. And the man who was there is sitting at a desk in Bern, reading other people's patent applications. Technical expert, third class. That's the person I'd like to talk to, not the monument.
Then you have the right man, and the wrong century's opinion of him. That clerk is far more real to me than the fellow on the posters. The one on the posters never had to worry about the rent. I did.
People look back at you now as if it was always going to happen, as if the patent office was just a waiting room before the inevitable.
Inevitable? No. Nothing about it felt inevitable while I was inside it. That is a trick the ending plays on the beginning. You survive, and afterward everyone insists they saw it coming. But the young man at that desk did not know he was anyone's story. He suspected he might amount to nothing in particular. That suspicion keeps a person honest.
And the doors that were supposed to open for someone like you, the university posts, the assistantships, those stayed shut for a while.
They did. I applied, I wrote my letters. I was, let us say, not the candidate the professors dreamed of. I had a bad habit of telling my teachers when I thought they were wasting my time, and teachers remember such things. So the academy did not want me, and I did not much want the academy as it was. We were both a little relieved, I think.
That's a strange kind of freedom, isn't it? Being left out.
It is the most useful kind, and no one thanks you for it. When no one is watching, no one is correcting you either. I could sit with one question for months, and no committee would ask me to justify the delay. And there were questions that would not let me sleep. Simple ones, the kind children ask, and adults stop asking because the answers are supposedly already settled. What is light, really? What it means for two things to happen at the same moment. I never accepted that everyone knows was the same thing as knowing.
So years before anyone was prepared to listen, you were already quarreling with things the rest of the world had signed off on.
Quarreling is a fair word, though I did not think of it as rebellion. I thought of it as refusing to be impressed. Most of what people call common sense is only a habit that got old enough to seem like a law.
That's exactly where I want to go, to how a boy learns to distrust the settled answers in the first place. Because you didn't arrive in Bern already asking those questions. Something taught you to push. So take me back, before the desk, before Switzerland even. Where does that stubbornness begin?
You want a childhood, and I can only give you a temperament. But very well. I remember a parade. I was small. Soldiers came down a street in Munich, and the whole city seemed delighted. My parents were delighted. And I watched these men move, all together, all the same, every foot landing at the same instant. And I was not delighted. I was frightened. Not of the soldiers, of obedience. Men moving as though not one of them owned the legs he was walking on. I made my parents promise I would never have to become one of them.
That's a strong reaction for a boy who couldn't yet have had the words for it.
No, but you feel a thing long before you can argue it. That is usually the order. The argument arrives years later to explain the feeling you already had.
So set the scene for me properly. The house, who's in it?
A comfortable house, not a grand one. My father, Hermann, a gentleman, easily carried along by other people's enthusiasms. In the evenings, he read us Schiller and Heine aloud. My mother, Pauline, was the firmer one and the musical one. She put a violin in my hands before I was old enough to resent it, though I found a way to resent it anyway for a few years. And my Uncle Jacob, the engineer. Ours was a house with a workshop attached to it. Dynamos, coils of wire, instruments for measuring electric current. My father and my uncle built the machinery that was just beginning to light up cities.
So electricity wasn't an abstraction to you. It was the family business.
It was the smell of the place, invisible, and yet it turned wheels and lit lamps. A child notices that, something you cannot see doing very real work in the world. I did not think, one day I will be a physicist. I thought the world was full of hidden machinery, and I wanted to get behind it.
And then, when you were still very young, you were handed a small object that made this hidden machinery feel real.
Yes, everyone loves the compass. I have to be careful with it, because in the retelling it turns into a prophecy, and it was not a prophecy. I was 4, perhaps 5. My father gave me a small compass, and the needle, however I turned the case, it swung back and pointed the same way. Something held it, something in the empty space around it that I could neither see nor touch. I remember going cold. Not a lesson, a shock. The plain fact that the world had a hidden order in it, and the order did not care in the least whether I understood it.
And you'd say that mattered more than anything a classroom gave you, right?
Far more, which is not a compliment to my classrooms.
So, what school teach you about authority?
That it would rather be obeyed than understood. Now understand me, I was not a poor pupil. I was usually near the top. But the gymnasium in Munich ran like a small army. You recited, you did not ask why. A boy who had memorized the answer and a boy who had understood the answer were given the same mark, and the school could not tell them apart and had no wish to. That was the thing I could never swallow. To me, those are opposite activities. Memorizing is holding a thing still. Understanding is taking it apart to see what makes it move.
I gather you weren't always graceful about making that distinction known.
There was a teacher who told me, quite sincerely, that he would be happier if I were not in his class. I said I had done nothing wrong. He agreed I had done nothing wrong. But I sat in the back row and I smiled, and my smile, he said, injured the respect a teacher needs. He was right in his way. I did find it funny. I never entirely lost the habit of finding authority funny.
Now, I have to correct one thing, because half the people listening believe it. That you failed mathematics.
Ah, my favorite fairy tale about myself. No. I was given a small book of geometry when I was about 12. The proofs in it, the certainty that a thing could be shown true beyond any further argument, that seized me more than anything a teacher ever assigned. I worked through the calculus on my own before I was 16. My uncle would hand me a problem the way you'd hand a child a sweet. The grain of truth is this. At 16, I sat the entrance examination for the Polytechnic in Zurich, 2 years early, and I failed it. The French, the languages, the parts that were not mathematics or physics. In those, I did very well. But he was clumsy at French makes a poor legend. He failed mathematics, that people enjoy.
Why do you think they enjoy it?
Because it forgives them. If even I failed and came out well, then the whole grim machinery of examinations counts for nothing, and everyone breathes easier. I would only add, I did not fail. I simply declined to be interested on schedule.
And by then the ground was already shifting under the family. The business wasn't doing good.
Well, it collapsed. The workshop, the dynamos, it did not survive. My father and uncle moved to Italy to try the whole thing again, and I was left behind in Munich to finish school. Alone. In that barracks of a gymnasium. I did not last. I found a doctor to certify that my nerves were bad. I left. I set about renouncing my German citizenship, and I went south to my family with no diploma, and, soon enough, no country.
Which is where the outsider you described earlier actually begins.
Just there. Switzerland was ahead of me. And Switzerland, it would turn out, was where I would finally be permitted to think.
You said Switzerland was where you'd finally be permitted to think. So let me test that. You finally get to the Polytechnic in Zurich, the school that's supposed to make room for a mind like yours. Did it?
Partly. The freedom was real, but it came with a bill. They still wanted attendance. They still wanted a young man in his seat, nodding at the correct moments. I gave them neither. I read what was alive, Maxwell, Hertz, Boltzmann, and let the lectures happen without me. I learned the physics that was breathing and skipped the physics that had been embalmed.
And the professors noticed.
Oh, they noticed. Weber taught me physics and decided I was insolent, which was not entirely unfair. So when the time came to hand out the assistantships, the ordinary first rung that every graduate stands on, I was the one man in my year left standing on the floor. Not because I couldn't do the work, because I had made myself inconvenient to the people who write the letters.
So the rebellious student doesn't become a professor, he becomes a clerk.
He becomes unemployed first. 2 years of it. Substitute teaching in Winterthur, a few months in Schaffhausen, and an advertisement in the newspaper offering private lessons in mathematics and physics, a free trial hour to tempt them. My father, who was not a man built for begging, wrote to a famous chemist in Leipzig asking him to take me on. No answer ever came back. That is what the years before the so-called miracle actually looked like. A good diploma, and not one door that would open.
And then burn.
Then burn. A friend from the Polytechnic, Marcel Grossman, the one whose notebooks had rescued me at exam time, spoke to his father, and his father knew the director of the Federal Patent Office. So, in the summer of 1902, I became a technical expert, third class. It sadly sounds more important than it was. I was at the junior rank, the lowest professional grade in the office, on probation. 3,500 francs a year to sit in a room and read other men's inventions.
Help me picture the actual work. What does a patent examiner do all day?
You are handed a drawing and a claim. Some man insists his machine is new, that it does what no machine has done. Your task is to peel away his enthusiasm and find the physics underneath. Is it true? Is it even possible? Has it been done already under another name? Much of it was electrical, mechanical, things that hummed and turned. I had grown up around exactly that kind of machinery, so none of it frightened me. And I was rather good at it. The whole trick was to distrust the claim while respecting the object.
Here's what I want to understand. The university shuts its door. The patent office is supposed to be the consolation prize. And yet you did your greatest work there, not at a lectern. What did that office give you that the university wouldn't?
Time, and no one to please. The work was done in a few hours, and the rest of the day was mine, with no professor watching to see what I did with it. At a university, I would have owed someone my attention. A supervisor, a fashion, a program of research already approved by men who had decided in advance what physics was permitted to ask. In the patent office, nobody cared what the third-class clerk thought about the nature of light. I was free to think about it, deeply, with no one there to rule that I had squandered my promise.
So the patent office did not only keep you outside academic life, in a strange way, it protected you from it.
Yes, that is exactly right. It protected me from the need to appear promising. Of course, it was painful. I wanted recognition. I wanted a place in science. But the obscurity gave me something precious: privacy. I could follow a thought for years without having to justify it every month to someone older and more established. I could be foolish in silence. That is not a small freedom.
And in that privacy, one problem kept returning.
One above all the others. Since I was a boy, I had carried a picture in my head. What would you see if you could run alongside a beam of light and keep pace with it? By the mechanics I had been taught, the light should simply stand still beside you, frozen in the air. But nothing in the theory of light allowed for a frozen wave. Both could not be true, and no one around me seemed troubled by it. Maxwell's equations insisted the speed of light was fixed. Plain common sense, the arithmetic of adding one speed to another, insisted it couldn't be. I carried that contradiction for years. It would not resolve, and it would not leave me alone.
People love to say you did all of this alone, the lone genius at his desk.
If anything, that is the part I would correct. Alone in title, yes. Alone in thought, never. In the evenings, a few of us, Solovin, Habicht, called ourselves an academy, which was mostly a joke, and read Hume and Mach and Poincaré and argued past midnight over sausage and cheese. Poincaré had already dared to ask whether time was truly absolute, whether two distant events could even be said to happen at once. And at the office I had Besso, a man I could walk over to and hand a half-finished thought. I did not conjure the questions out of nothing. I refused to stop asking them. Those are very different things.
Refused to stop asking. That's the part the miracle version skips. Years of a question that won't answer you. What does that do to a person?
It makes you a little strange to live with. You carry the thing everywhere, half listening at dinner, turning it over while you read some inventor's claim for a better dynamo. The question does not keep office hours, and it will not sit still either. What began as something about light became, without my permission, a question about time, and then about motion itself. I did not steer it there, it dragged me.
And were they connected? The light, the time, the atoms? One thread you were pulling?
Not in the tidy way people would like. Some of them pulled against each other. My notion that light came in packets sat very uneasily beside everything I believed about light as a wave. They were not one problem with one answer. What they shared was a single stubbornness underneath, a refusal to take the foundations on trust. Everyone else was building on ground they assumed was solid. I kept asking whether the ground was there at all. Light, time, motion, the trembling of atoms in a drop of water. Different questions, but the same crack running under all of them. And that pressure had been rising for years with nowhere to drain. A pressure like that does not wait politely. It builds, like water behind a dam.
So the dam breaks. And when people tell this story now, they call it your miracle year. 1905, the year the patent clerk remade physics. When you hear the word miracle, what's wrong with it?
It does the one thing I dislike most. It makes it sound like grace, like something arrived. Nothing arrived. I had been standing in front of the same 3 or 4 questions for years, refusing to blink. What happened in 1905 was not lightning. It was a dam giving way. When water has been rising that long, the moment it does looks sudden. It is not sudden. It is late.
When people look back at that year now, they usually put the special relativity and the Brownian motion papers at the center of it. They treat it as the Great Rupture.
Yes, because those are the ones that rearranged their imagination afterward. Clocks, trains, simultaneity, these are dramatic things. They make good stories. But at the time, I did not think of those papers as the most dramatic ones. I told a friend that spring which paper I considered revolutionary, and it was not the one about time. It was the one about light.
The light paper. Start there then. What was so dangerous about it?
Everyone knew light was a wave. Maxwell had made it a wave, beautifully, and the picture worked, until you shone light on a metal and watched little electrons jump off it. If light were only a wave, then a brighter light should knock them off harder. It doesn't. Change the brightness, nothing changes. Change the color, everything changes. Below a certain color, no matter how blinding the lamp, not one electron moves. That is not how a wave behaves.
So, what did you say was happening?
I said light arrives in lumps, little packets, each carrying an amount of energy fixed by its color, not its brightness. One packet, one kick. A dim light of the right color is a thin stream of the right-sized packets. It works. A blinding light of the wrong color is a flood of packets, each too small to do anything. It fails. And to say that, I had to suggest that Maxwell's wave, which every serious man trusted, was not the whole truth about light. That is why I called it revolutionary. It was the one paper that admitted I did not yet know what light was.
So that's the frightening one, not relativity.
Relativity rearranged the furniture. This one asked whether we understood the room.
Take the next one. Brownian motion, tiny particles jittering in water. Why did that matter beyond the microscope?
Because in 1905 it was still respectable to doubt that atoms existed at all.
People doubted atoms were real?
Serious men. They treated the atom as convenient bookkeeping, useful for sums, but not necessarily a thing you could put your hand on. Now, drop fine grains into water and watch them under the glass. They never sit still. They tremble, they wander endlessly, going nowhere. I said that trembling is the water itself. Countless molecules you cannot see striking the grain from every side, and now and then striking a little harder from one side than the other. The dance you can see is the signature of the atoms you cannot. And I gave the numbers to check it. That is the part that mattered. It turned the atom from an argument into a measurement.
Now the third, relativity. What did it ask us to give up?
The one thing nobody thought they were holding. Let me build it the way it built in me. Take anything ordinary, a ball. Stand still and throw it, and it leaves your hand at some speed. Now throw that same ball forward from a moving train. To a man on the platform, the ball is faster. The speed of the train and the speed of the throw simply add together. Run toward a ball coming at you, and it meets you sooner. Flee from it, and it takes longer to catch you. This is the plainest fact in the world. Speeds add and subtract depending on how you yourself are moving.
Sure, that's just how motion works.
It is how everything works. Except light. Maxwell's equations described light better than anything ever had, and they give light one particular speed, an enormous exact number. But nowhere in those equations does it ask who is watching or how fast the watcher is moving. The number simply is. Light does not care whether you race toward it or run from it. It comes at you at the same speed either way.
Help me feel why that's a problem, and not just a strange fact.
Then chase it. Suppose you could run fast enough to ride beside a beam of light, matched to it exactly. By the ordinary rule, the ball, the train, the beam should now hang still next to you. A frozen wave, light standing motionless in the air. But go back to Maxwell, and there is no such thing. His equations do not allow a standing motionless light wave. It is not a solution, it is nonsense. And of course no one had ever seen such a thing. So I stood there holding two truths that could not both be true. Either the plainest fact in the world, that speeds add, was wrong, or Maxwell was wrong.
And you didn't blink at Maxwell.
I trusted Maxwell further than I trusted common sense. And that is the whole temperament of the thing. Everyone else tried to rescue the common sense and quietly patch the light. I decided the common sense was the guest, not the host. I lost the better part of a year inside that, and got nowhere.
And then?
And then I went to see Michel Bessot, the one man in Bern I could do a proper battle with. I laid the whole hopeless thing in front of him, and in talking it through, the answer turned over. The error was not in the light, it was in time. We had all assumed that now is the same everywhere. The two events either happen together or they do not, and every observer must agree. But suppose you return to the train. A man stands on the platform, another man rides inside the carriage. Lightning strikes the front and the back of the train. To the man on the platform, the two flashes may arrive at the same time. He says the strikes were simultaneous. But the man inside the train is moving toward one flash and away from the other. The light from the front and the light from the back do not reach him in the same way. If the speed of light is fixed for both men, then they cannot both keep the same idea of at the same time. That was the key. Not that one man is fooled and the other sees correctly. Each is entitled to describe what he measures, but they will not agree on simultaneity. They will not agree on the universal now. Let that go, and the contradiction dissolves. The next morning I came back to Besso and said, near enough, "Thank you. I have completely solved it."
So time itself stops being the fixed stage everyone was standing on.
Yes, the train does not merely change how you see motion. It changes what you are allowed to mean by time. If two observers are moving differently, their clocks and measurements cannot remain identical, while light keeps the same speed for both of them. Something has to yield. We thought the thing that yielded must be light. It was not. It was our old certainty that time is absolute. Two events that happen at the same moment for the man on the platform need not happen at the same moment for the man on the train. There is no single master clock hung over the universe. That is what had to go, not a fact of physics, a habit of thought. 5 weeks later, the paper was finished. I thanked Besso for it. No one else.
And E equals mc squared? Where does the most famous equation in the world come in?
As an afterthought. Truly, it fell out of the relativity work almost as a remark, that if a body gives off energy, it must lose a little mass. That mass and energy are two faces of one coin. I wrote to my friend that I could not be sure whether the Lord was laughing at me and leading me around by the nose. It did not feel like the crown of anything. It felt like a curious thing I noticed on the way out the door.
4 papers, 3 fields. From a government desk, in the evenings, a married man with a 1-year-old at home. When people go looking for the single lightning bolt, the one moment, is there one?
No, that is the whole point. And it is the point everyone loses. There was no moment. There were years of refusing answers that satisfied cleverer, better-placed men than me. The papers came close together because the pressure behind them was one pressure. Pull a single thread hard enough for long enough, and several knots come loose at once.
And when they went out into the world, did physics stop and turn around?
No, and we should be honest about that too. I was still at my desk the next morning.
That's the detail I keep circling. You'd just done that. Did anything feel different?
The coffee was the same. The chair still complained. Someone wanted my opinion on a mechanism for winding clocks, which, given how I had spent my spring, I found genuinely funny. I had just quarreled with time on a cosmic scale, and now I was being asked to help wind it.
What about the field? Somebody out there must have read these papers and understood what had landed on them.
Some did. Not all at once, and not evenly. That is the part people forget. Recognition does not arrive as a single letter. It comes in pieces from different directions at different speeds.
Who came first?
Planck. He took the relativity paper seriously very quickly enough that it startled me. Here was one of the established men of the field, and he did not dismiss the clerk. That mattered. When someone of weight decides you are worth arguing with, you have crossed a line you cannot cross for yourself.
And the light quantum paper? The one you yourself called the revolutionary one.
That one they left standing in the cold for years. It is almost comic. The same men who would come round on relativity could not swallow the light quanta. Even Planck, who had opened that particular door himself, wished I would close it again and stop making a mess. So you have the strange picture. I am being welcomed and refused at the same table, for two papers written in the same season.
That's a peculiar kind of loneliness. To be half-believed.
It is the honest kind, and it does not resolve the way a story would like it to. I stayed at the patent office until 1909. 4 years after the year everyone now points to, I was still examining applications. The world was slowly deciding what to do with me, and in the meantime I still had a salary to earn and a family to keep.
I want to sit in that gap for a moment, because it's where we're going to end. I close every one of these the same way. 3 questions, same 3 whoever's in the chair. You can push back on any of them.
I usually do.
What do people most misunderstand about you?
That it was quick. That there is a certain kind of mind, the genius, you like to say, for whom the answers simply arrive, fully formed, like weather. People imagine I saw further because I could leap. I did not leap. I was slow. I stayed with things long after it was reasonable to stay with them. The talent, if there was one, was a kind of stubbornness, an unwillingness to be embarrassed by a simple question. That is not the same as being clever. Cleverness moves on. I could not.
Second question. What did the world gain from your work, and what did it cost?
That is a great question. The world gained a small thing that feels large. Permission to distrust its own common sense. Time is not what you feel it to be. Matter is not solid in the way your hand tells you. That is what the work offered, not answers so much as a loosening. And what did it cost? You want me to say something heavy here. I will only say it was paid in ordinary currency. Years. Attention spent on a problem instead of on almost everything else. A certain solitude that I chose and did not always enjoy. It was not tragic. It was simply the bill.
And later, being turned into a symbol. The hair, the face on the wall.
That cost something too. So it is a strange thing to complain about. When they make you into a monument, they smooth you. They keep the answer and throw away the doubt. And the doubt was the whole of it. The doubt did the work. A statue does not doubt.
Last one. Somewhere right now there's a young thinker outside the room. No title, no invitation, doing the real work where no one's looking. What would you want them to understand from your life before 1905?
I am suspicious of lessons drawn from a life. A life is not a fable. It does not come with a moral stitched to the end. So I will not tell them to believe in themselves. That is empty, and the world does not much care whether you do. I will say something smaller. The desk that bored me also protected me. No one was watching, so no one told me what was foolish to think about. If you are outside the room, you have been handed something the people inside have lost. You may still ask the question everyone else considers settled. And most settled questions are settled only because people grew tired. Do not mistake their tiredness for an answer.
This whole conversation, I've been chasing one thing. What you understood before the world understood you. If it can be said plainly, how would you frame it?
That the universe was under no obligation to agree with me, or with anyone. Common sense is a local custom. I understood, before it was safe to say so, that the rules everyone treated as the floor of the world were only the ceiling of our habits. And I understood that if I was right, I would be right alone for a while. That is not courage. It is arithmetic. Being early means being alone. I did the sum and stayed.
Albert Einstein, thank you. This was a genuine pleasure, and I hope it isn't the last time.
Nothing is ever the last time, if you have been paying attention. That was rather the whole point.
This was the Immortal Minds podcast.